I want to welcome everybody back to the Behind the Well show. Roger, Abel, your host. I've got Jonas with me today. How's it going, Jonas?
Good, Roger. Good to be here again on your popular podcast.
Yeah, we're happy to have you back. We always seem to have good shows, and I think, this is going to be a good show for you, partly because you wrote that book, The No Budget Life, and we're going to talk about some budgeting things today that I think are relevant to people, and hopefully you can provide some good insight into that. I know we were just talking about large ticket items. We're going to talk about that on the radio show tonight. How do those kind of fit into your budget?
Right. Yeah, the big ticket items, the way that they've increased in price, and you're talking about double-digit increases in new car purchases, and even more than that with homes. Right here in the Midwest, you have Indiana, Ohio. You have, if you're looking at even Wisconsin, double-digit increases. If these continue, then the price of homes will double in 7 to 10 years, and that's kind of scary.
I think it's definitely scary for people who are barrier to entry trying to get into the housing market. I just look at my neighborhood and there's a house in my neighborhood that literally has went up double since it was built in 2016 and just sold in a few days. So, last year we heard all this talk about how the housing market was going to crash. We're going to have a recession. And guess what? None of it's come true. I mean, housing's still tough. There's very little inventory. And as you look at what housing's doing, just the cost to house a family, doing to their everyday budgets, wreaking havoc on families who are trying to get into the market. I mean, it's really hard to buy a house. You used to be able to get a good starter home for 125 in our area, 125, 150,000. Those don't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's really scary when you have younger kids just to think about the cost of them being on their own. And one of the things the financial media has been experts about the last 2 years is being wrong about recessions.
Where's that? We're still waiting.
Yeah, I was so nervous about, they had me going about a potential recession. I put on a workshop for my customers at Granite City and went over. I mean, that was 2 years ago already, and we haven't had a recession. So, it's kind of scary, some of these big ticket items, how they're going up, especially for the future generations to try to, like you said, get started.
Well, a couple weeks ago, we actually did a show where we talked about how a woman paid off $300,000 in debt in just a couple of years. And paying off debt is becoming even more difficult for people for a couple of different reasons. One, as the housing percentage of your budget increases, that's one. All of a sudden, if your cost of housing went up 20, 30, 40%, well, that eats into your budget, makes it harder to pay off debt. But then consumers are also getting hit with this other double whammy, and that's that interest rates are significantly higher than they were. I mean, you think about a person who was buying a $300,000 home 3 years ago, where interest rates were going to cost them $1,600 a month. Now it's $2,100, and that doesn't include the cost of the increase on the value of the home, because no home that was $300 3 years ago is $300 now. It's $450 or $500. So one of the things we thought we'd talk about in today's show is how do we actually simplify the budget, make things easier so we can kind of work out of some of the debts that we may have had. And, Jonas, I know when you wrote the book, you kind of try to eliminate the word budget. You called it the no budget lifestyle. Maybe tell me a little bit about your philosophy with that book, and what that no budget lifestyle actually means, because people think of that. I think when people hear that, it's this negative connotation like irresponsibility. It's not what it is. I'll let you explain what it is, but it's still a budget, just a different way to approach it. And, me personally, I've had the philosophy for a long time that budgets are broken. And you should know where your money's going and give it responsibilities. But if you look at most budgeting worksheets or websites, what's the first line item? How much is your mortgage? Car payment. It's all these other people. And the end, guess what the last line item is? Savings.
Pay yourself.
It's exactly backwards. But tell us a little bit about your No Budget Lifestyle book. what the motivation for maybe doing that book was, Jonas.
Yeah, I always thought that the word budget had a negative connotation, and it kind of discouraged people because they're setting themselves up for failure, kind of like a diet. You'd always go over your budget, and you'd feel bad about that. And the last thing that I've learned about, investing people's money the last 30 years is I don't want them to feel bad about money. I want them to actually feel good about money. And so I started to call it, I use the term spending plan instead of a budget. It's kind of like being on a diet, Roger, where it's like instead of telling you're out to eat, instead of telling people, friends you're out to eat with, that you're on a diet, just say that you're eating smaller portions or you're avoiding sugar. And instead of telling people you're on keto, just say I'm trying to stay away from sugar. It almost creates encouragement instead of discouragement. And I think the psychology behind it, if you call it a spending plan instead of a budget, it's a spending plan geared around your household's lifestyle investments. And I just call a lifestyle investment what you want to feel good about spending money in that period of your life with your family. And for the Everett family, we like to take these little small staycations over the weekends. And the last thing that you want to do, if it's traveling, if traveling is your lifestyle investment, the last thing you want to do is go to Disney or go on a vacation and have to worry about spending money. I mean, you saw this firsthand. We call this it's supposed to be the most magical place on earth, and for some couples, it was the most toxic place on earth because they didn't have a spending plan, right? They went into it without a spending plan.
I feel bad for people that go to Disney for the first time and don't know what they're getting into, because the cost of that trip is very expensive just to get there and to sign up to go to the parks.
Yeah, we love Disney, by the way.
It.
So
I'm going back.
They have black helicopters, and Mickey has surveillance everywhere. But
what I'd tell people, if you haven't been there, whatever you spent to fly there, get your lodging, and go get your park passes, that's how much you're going to spend once you're there too. A lot of people think just getting there is the cost. Yeah, it's pretty tough to eat for under $200 at the Disney resorts.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
you got to
exactly.
be resourceful, and you can take food in. So people need to think about it. But you're right. Like when you go there, it's supposed to be the trip of a lifetime, and for a lot of people, it's not the trip. It's the opposite, because they didn't know what they were getting into.
And I think just having a spending plan, not only Disney. I mean, look at the lottery winners in America. How a third of lotto winners are bankrupt. How is that possible? How can that possibly happen? It's the lack of a spending plan. And about 10 years ago, or about 13 years ago now, the lotto went through Cedar Rapids here, and I was fortunate enough to work with a couple of the lottery winners. Well, out of the 20 lottery winners from a company in Cedar Rapids, there's one that is broke. And he's the youngest one, and he's the one that didn't have a spending plan, because I tried to counsel him on spending plan and on having a spending plan, and he had no part of it. He wanted a Lexus hybrid. He wanted to get married right away. He wanted a new house right away. There was no spending plan, and lo and behold, he's bankrupt.
And people that hear stories about that think that person just blew their money on purpose, and it doesn't happen on purpose.
No, it doesn't.
It's the silent stuff nobody thinks about. They go spend $1.5 million in a house, or $1 million in a house. They forgot about the $25,000 a year in property tax and the $5,000 a year to insure it. Like, that all adds up. People wonder, well, okay, you win the $100 million lottery. How could you blow it all? Well, you go buy a $10 million house in Florida that cost $100,000 a year to insure, cost you $12,000 a month in taxes. You do enough of that stuff, it's all gone.
Right.
I've watched, I don't know if you know who Ben Mala is. You probably don't, but he's a real estate investor. He's all over YouTube. He's just really entertaining. He was talking about how much it costs to upkeep his $10 million mansion. It was like $110,000 a month. But people don't think about all of those other costs when they put together a spending plan or lack thereof. They think they won the lottery and can do whatever we want. We're rich. Well, you will be for a short period of time if you don't figure out how to treat the money. But I think the key takeaway about your book, Jonas, is that having a budget or a spending plan, it's not a one size fits all. And different types of people are going to be attracted to different methods of doing this. Some people want to like nail down their budget to the penny. Some people just want to have broad categories they put it into. That's kind of how I am. I allocate X amount to my house, X amount to savings. I don't want to say I'm only allowed to spend $27 at Starbucks. That's not how I want to live. Like, here's my out to eat grocery and food money. Let's figure out how to make that work for the month. But if you're struggling to figure out how to do the budget, the best thing you can do is just try a different type. People don't want to do a budget. Most budgets don't work. Let's just be completely honest about it. But if one method isn't working, try a different method. Like you said, Jonas, the most important thing that you do is have some type of a spending plan or spending strategy. It doesn't really matter how it works or what you call it. Just have a plan of where your money's going to go.
Absolutely. Having any spending plan is better than having no spending plan at all. And, one thing that I've learned is people forget. And the financial institutions love the fact that people forget, right? That's why they're actually advertising. Restaurants advertise Visa, MasterCard. They want you to pay with your credit card. They know that you pay more. They know that you order dessert. Even gas stations, the second biggest expense that gas stations have is credit card transaction fees, and they're okay with that because people actually will forget how much there is coming out of their account. So I think having a spending plan. And I like this article about this lady that chopped away at $300,000 of debt over 3 years. She said that having a spending plan instead of a budget, sometimes people forget it doesn't always work out, right? If she went over her spending plan or she bought something more expensive, she felt less guilty having a spending plan that she went overboard on than having a budget that she couldn't keep under. So I think it's back to the instead of being on a diet, you're eating smaller portions, and you're just telling yourself something to encourage yourself instead of discourage yourself.
So when you were talking about that, I had an off-subject thought that came to mind, how, when you go places, you're trying to figure out, if you're with your friends and you're trying to spend less, you tell them, I'm cutting out sugar. This has nothing to do financial, but this happened to me, I don't know, this is probably 5 years ago. I had a client, I went to the nursing home. It was a client I inherited, and I went with the family to the nursing home in small town Iowa. And I had to have lunch there. Have you ever had lunch at a nursing home?
My daughter serves
in a small town.
Yeah.
So they brought out like the mystery meat, and I, had a bite, and the mashed potatoes, that was okay. And then they said, would you like some pudding for dessert? And I said, nope, I gave up sugar.
Yep.
It was my way out of the pudding. I'm like, I can't eat the pudding. Oh, when you said that, that's all I could think about. Is how I gave up sugar. Hard pass on that pudding. But, you mentioned the lottery winners, Jonas, and I think, especially last week, it hit a little over $1 billion, the Powerball. And everybody thinks, hey, if I won the lottery, it'd buy me all the happiness in the world. But in reality, do you think you can actually buy happiness? Can money buy happiness?
Well, I think that what the Beatles say, money can't buy you love, but it can buy you a little bit of happiness. But just working with a couple of lottery winners, one of them told me that if they would have won an extra zero at the end, things would have been a lot worse.
Really?
Yeah. To have an extra zero one.
Why did they think it would be worse? I'm just curious.
Too much chaos. You're taking yourself. You mentioned small town Iowa. you're taking you're taking your lifestyle away from your friends and your family, and you just have an aura about you that there's no more privacy. It's almost like having your own YouTube channel 24 hours a day. People are always curious about what you're going to buy next and everything. But there are some studies done that, and I think this is psychological too. And this was fun to see for the hardworking folks out there. And I think a lot of people in Iowa are very, very hardworking. They do a very good job saving their money. When couples, the psychology of couples hitting this threshold, or even one wage earner hitting a threshold of 100,000, or if a household hits a threshold of 100,000, I think that's important for the psychology of enjoying your money a little bit, because I was always brought up that making six digits was a fantastic income, and I think that is getting to that $100,000 threshold, a husband and wife. I think that's important. And there's a lot of studies that, if households make more than $75,000 in income, they actually are a little bit happier than other households that are less than that, socioeconomic households that are lower on the lower end. And that's just kind of the psychology of it. But I think I think that just your self-worth of making maybe that 100,000 as a couple makes you feel better about money, and I think that there's psychology behind that.
I think Dr. Peterson, he was out there talking about, he's a psychologist specializing in the money aspect, and he's the one that did one of the studies about, hey, if you make 75,000, there's really not much more happiness that comes after that. That's probably clearly a low number now based upon what's happened with inflation in our economy. But I do think once you get to a certain threshold, like, you don't have to worry about feeding your family. You don't have to worry about, making ends meet. You're getting by. Does more money buy happiness? I don't think so. It buys more things. It buys more experiences. But the question is whether those things make you happy. And I'll go back to your Disney analogy. You're able to afford the $10,000 to get to Disney and get the tickets and your airfare and everything. You think you're going to be happier. And then you go there. Were you really happier?
Right.
You might not be. Even though you had all the money to do what you wanted, it might not have been a great trip for you. Now, for our family, we had a great time.
Right.
We want to go back. But like you said, we saw lots of families that weren't happy.
So you're saying any amount of income, it's important to have a spending plan, no matter what.
Well, I was watching... I spent a fair amount of time on YouTube, obviously, and there was a Dave Ramsey clip. Family making $190,000, they're paycheck to paycheck. Are they happier? Probably not. They're still stressed out about money. Just because you have more doesn't mean you're more financially secure. In fact, some people that make more are less financially secure because they're carrying more debt, more payments, more risk. It's odd. People don't think that. People think you make $300,000, you're set.
Right.
Well, maybe not. Depends on what you have and what you borrowed. If you're paying cash for everything, you're in a really great spot.
Yeah, and I think if you can get to a point, because we're all going to have to spend money, right? If you can get to a point where you're okay with spending money and you don't feel guilty about that and you don't dread spending money, again, there has to be a balance somewhere, Roger. You and I have tried to work with hoarders over the years, people that's just completely despise spending money, and all of a sudden you do a financial plan on them and they have $5 million saved up, and then their kids are going to spend it in an inheritance. So that's not a good relationship with money. Neither is hoping that the government's just going to pay you to sit on the couch and so you can drink Starbucks and play video games. That's not a good relationship with money. So just like with everything else, I think there's a balance to the financial stuff. And I think it was Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, said, if money isn't emotional, what the heck is it? It's the number one emotion. I mean, we had a former business partner that his first week I was talking to him about where he used to work, and this player, being a financial advisor, he said that, well, I made more money where I used to work full time. I make less here. He was all charged up about it. And, I had to like tell him that, well, you own your own business. It's not, it's not all meat and gravy, right away. You don't get the sundae and the cherry and the cake and the icing on the cake right away. You got to build it up a little bit. But I think money's super emotional for people.
Well, I think our discussion just in general goes to show that money's more emotional and psychological than people think. Most financial stuff is run by emotion, and that's how we make decisions about money. One of the things that I was thinking about was this thing called anchoring bias. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
Absolutely, yeah.
But and you probably do, because you read more books than anybody I know, especially on like the psychology of money and influence and different things. But, if people don't know what this is really just where humans unconsciously rely on the first number given and then determine whether that's good or not. In the first thing I'll think about is the 401k. A lot of people think, well, if I get my 401k match, that's all I need to do. Well, that's not really true, because some places the 401k match is 3%. So they have to put in 6 to get 3. They're like, oh, that's great. I'm doing everything I need to do for retirement. Most people who anchor their decision-making on that, they're going to set themselves up for failure, because a 9% contribution for most people is not going to get you where you want to go. So that's one of the unintentional anchors that can cause negative things to happen. The other type of anchor that you see out there, 25% off coupon. Well, oh yeah, it's on sale it's $100. It's on sale for $75. It's a great deal. Well, not if everything just starts off 25% higher.
Right.
It's just the normal deal. But people make decisions based upon what they first see. What was the story you told me? Was it Robert Cialdini's book about the two brothers that had the suit company?
Oh, yeah.
Tell that story, because that actually is like a great analogy of what this anchoring idea is all about.
Yeah, the two tailors had a suit company, and of course people would come in and looking for the cheapest suit, and they would shop around suits. They would size them up. This person that was looking for a suit, they'd size them up with the most expensive suit, and it'd look fantastic on them. And they'd say, "Well, you can't afford that." But they actually anchored, that person in a Lexus, a new Lexus, right away. And the psychology of it, you can't get your mind off how good you looked in the first suit. So they would sell basically 100% of the highest, most expensive, and they were also high quality too. So it was actually, at the end of the day, even though it was kind of an influential way to do it, a lot of the customers were repeat customers for that.
What's
company.
ironic about that, though, is because I like to have nice clothes. Most people see the most expensive suit as like a luxury item. What they don't understand is that luxury suit that you think you bought might last 3 or 4 times as long as the cheap one, and in the long run, actually be less expensive.
Yep.
And that's probably why they had repeat customers. But they're like, man, that great suit I bought, that lasts me 5, 6, 7 years. The other one, 18 months, and it's all over. There's a reason sometimes things are more expensive. Not all the time, but a lot of times you're getting what you pay for.
Yeah, we talk about anchoring, and I think Oscar Wilde said that people know the price of everything and the value of nothing. You have some people that are hung up with gas prices all the time, that I can't believe gas is $4.50, a gallon, and then they'll go and buy a $6,000 vacuum cleaner, like my mother and father-in-law did. And I'm like, hold on a second, there's a disconnection here. Don't you want to call your son-in-law before you buy like a $6,000 vacuum cleaner? Because I know that you're very frugal and you're worried about gas prices. So I think that these big ticket items, people need to realize that you buy things based on emotion. and you back it up with whatever rationale your brain can think of after you purchase something. So again, back to the spending plan, a lot of people don't have $6,000 set aside for a vacuum cleaner in their spending plan. It just doesn't make a lot of sense if you have a spending plan. So yeah, be careful, because the retailers and even the financial institutions know all about this anchoring and how to, I would say in some ways, kind of trick you into buying things.
So Jonas, ultimately, I think the key to conquering this anchoring bias is just continually questioning your instincts.
Right.
You know, nobody thinks about what you just said something about bananas. Nobody thinks about that. No one thinks when they walk in a grocery store that they're getting tricked to buying the most expensive thing, but it's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Why do grocery stores constantly move stuff around?
Bingo.
Because you have to keep looking, so then you end up buying more. I'm going to give you a great example. We got back from Kansas City last week, and we hadn't been home for a couple of weeks, and we had to get groceries. So I ordered groceries. And I'm talking ordering groceries. I didn't have anything in my refrigerator because we were gone for like 3 weeks. So anything perishable was gone. Order groceries, $210, which, and I didn't order, we don't order for a whole week because that doesn't work in our household. But I got 2 little girls, so groceries are expensive when you buy fruits and vegetables. My bill's usually $300 when I go to the store.
Yep.
What's the difference? I actually tell you the difference. My wife wanted me to make some veggie tacos, some vegetable tacos that we were trying to copy the recipe from a restaurant we found in Kansas City. So, yep, I had the list of what I needed, but I also bought the pickled red onion jar. I'm like, well, man, the pickled banana peppers, those look good too. And then that extra salsa, I need that, and the hot sauce. And the next thing I know, I spent $90 to make veggie tacos. I'm like, I should have just went out to dinner. Get home, my wife's like, I don't even like pickled red onions. I'm like, no kidding, neither do I, but they sure look good. But that's exactly what happens when you go to the store, because they make you walk around, and nobody is thinking about that. So I always tell my wife, should try to order our groceries, because we spend a third less every single time. And none of that, we waste less food. You know, most people, if you're going to the grocery store multiple times a week, you're probably at some level have some level of waste that you wouldn't have if you were ordering your groceries, because you're not getting the impulse buys. And the other thing, I don't end up buying the sugary treats when I'm ordering online. You know, when you go to the grocery store, you're going to grab the Oreos, or you're going to grab whatever's there, because they know how to get you to buy it.
Yep.
They know you're going to go get milk. So let's buy the milk. The package of cookies. I mean, right by the milk aisle at Hy-Vee is a whole stand of Oreos. Well, how are you going to not get a package of Oreos, especially if you have your kids with you? Dad, can we get Oreos? Good luck saying no. You're going to melt down in the grocery store.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that you have to have a gut feeling that you're being maybe duped a little bit, and you're exactly right, Roger. The old saying, you never go to the grocery store hungry. I always tell the clerk, you come in for one thing and look what happens. I'm guilty of it too. It's a guilty pleasure, but it's definitely not a spending plan.
So does the same thing work? You never go to the bar thirsty?
Hey, that's a good one. I'm going to write that down right here. So, but yeah, just kind of be careful about anchoring, because it's out there and it happens all the time, and everybody has to spend money.
And Jonas, you know, the theme of today's episode is really about people's relationship with money. And, you know, I was doing some research for this show, and I came across a statistic that kind of blew my mind, just from the Harris poll. 6 out of 10 people say they would like to be billionaires one day. What I found more interesting, though, is that 44% of the respondents said they have the available tools to become billionaires.
Wow.
There's only 770 billionaires in the whole world. How can 44% of the people believe they have the tools to become a billionaire? Because if you look at the billionaires, Jonas, you start to think about people who just change the entire fabric of the world.
Yep.
And I'll name them: Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Michael Dell, Bill Gates. These are billionaires. What they did, they came up with a very unique idea. They were able to execute it, and they had a little bit of luck along the way.
Yeah, and they disrupted entire industries, right?
That was actually the word they were disruptors.
Yep.
But that when I was researching this, it also led me to this blog post from a best-selling author where he listed 31 things that he's learned about money. And it reminds me about a couple weeks ago, you were on the show, but I was watching a gentleman on YouTube. His name's Ryan Serhant. He's from the $1 Million Listing New York show. And Ryan Serhant deals with only high value properties in New York City. So there's 770 billionaires in the United States. 91 of the billionaires in the world are on Ryan Serhant's phone. And he was using some of the ideas and takeaways he got from billionaires. And you know what? He kind of broke it down to the one commonality was between them. They simplify things. He was talking about going out to dinner with him, Jonas, and he went out to dinner with multiple. But the first time he went out to dinner with one, the waitress handed him the menu. He handed the menu back and said, "You pick, it's all good." And the reason was he didn't want to waste time ordering food, and he knew everything was good. And so Ryan Serhant was a little apprehensive about it. He's like, okay. But then he realized like all of dinner was relaxing because they didn't have to worry about what they were going to eat and they didn't have to make a decision. But there's some lessons we've learned about money. And I'll kind of let you open this up. What do you think some of the best lessons you've actually learned about money are in your almost 30 years doing this, Jonas?
Yeah, I really like this this article that he did. Pick the low hanging fruit. Don't have too much in a checking account at any time. Have an emergency fund, maybe 6 to 10 months. And I call that a first spare tire. Your second spare tire, you have to invest, or at least put into a CD, a laddered CD. He goes basically that, he says a lot of good things, but, I think that it's just being savvy and having some expectations that are doable. And what I really like about it is you just got to somehow get started in your 20s on this stuff. I mean, how many times, Roger, have you seen somebody in their 60s come in and they've done a good job saving money, but they have this debt that is just bugging them. And you go over the interest rate, and the interest rate is a good interest rate, but the debt is just bugging them, and it's keeping them from, you said, enjoying their lunch. It's almost keeping them from enjoying their lives because that's all you can think about. But the sooner you get started, I think is the most important thing. What was your favorite part of this advice that he had?
So I love this one right here. And he said, I've never met a successful person who's ever reached their number. And I use this in my practical life. I'm sure this has happened to you, but when you're 25, you'll say, well, when I hit this number, I'll be good. Well, then you get more successful and the number goes up and the number goes up and it keeps going up. And really successful people actually never hit the number because they keep moving the goalpost on themselves to push them, right? If you start out saying, hey, I want to have a net worth, like I had personal goals. So if your goal is, hey, at 40, I want a net worth of at least $1 million and you hit it, what are you going to do? Just stop? No, you move the goalpost. Now it's 10. So people who are really successful, they never hit their number because if they hit it, it would mean the challenge is over. Like successful people like the challenge.
Right.
We talk about our job. Our job's the job of hope. There's jobs that have no hope.
Yep.
Like this is a job for people that want to keep moving the goalpost. So that's my favorite one that, most people that are highly motivated, highly successful will actually never hit their number.
Yeah, I talked about this in my second book, Upside Down Retirement. You don't need $1 million to retire. That what you're talking about is somebody that's in the driver's seat on their finances, and they're in the driver's seat of their career. And we have our favorite neighbors that are our best friends, and they're always asking me for financial advice. I'm helping them the best I can with their 401ks, but they're always complaining about money. But one of the things that they always do is they always get carry out. And I did a little sample last night because I knew I wanted something for the podcast today. I went to Hy-Vee. I got an $8 steak, and I chopped that up. That fed the whole family because I made steak salads for the whole family. So all in, we had the rest of the ingredients, like you said, in our fridge. We already had the rest of the ingredients. All in, I had an $8 meal. Compare that to a story where you go out and you get carry out, you get chicken fingers, you throw a couple of kids in the mix. What's carry out now if you have a couple of kids?
Chick-fil-A's $50. I'm telling you, we stopped there on the way home the other day. I'm like, how did I just spend $50 for lunch at Chick-fil-A and all I got? Just grilled chicken nuggets, and that's it. Just the entree, not a meal.
You're right.
It's unbelievable. But that's a good point. Like,
I'm sorry. I had $5 on sale, $5 boneless buffalo chicken wings. So I misspoke there. You're looking at about all in $14 to feed a family.
So Jonas, here's what I'm trying to figure out: how you got out of the grocery store with an $8 steak and boneless chicken wings, and that's it.
I don't know.
That's
how
almost
I did
impossible. I mean, like, you didn't have to buy any dipping sauce or
Right.
anything to go with it.
Well, you use the steak's juice for gravy. That's a little cooking tip for the show.
Well, Jonas, I appreciate having you on a show again. We always seem to have a good show. It's always fun. With that said, if you're a listener out there, I want you to subscribe, like our channel. If you have a favorite piece of financial advice that you've learned or you want to share with us, you can go to btwellshow.com, submit that. We'll put it up on the air. And until next time, I want to thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.